Welcome back, folks. It's me, Joe Pasevich. Today is Wednesday, May the 14th, 2025. Before you know it, it'll be July 3rd, and we'll be celebrating the 3rd of July in Marshfield. But Memorial Day is coming up in less than 2 weeks. And for information purposes, in Marshfield, because the Veterans Park is still under construction, because we're trying to save the migrating fish, the herring, we will not be having any ceremonies at the Veterans Park because it's still under construction. So the parade will start at Library Plaza, go out onto Ocean Street, and then go down towards Moraine Street by the First Congregational Church, and then hook a left onto Moraine Street, and then there'll be a ceremony on the town green. So that's what's happening. Otherwise, so there's a slight change just for this year. So I hope to see you there, okay, for the Memorial Day ceremonies, and, you know, fingers crossed the weather will be nice. The other things going on pertain to some changes in town. There's a lot of changes in town. After the election, okay, a couple of weeks ago, we've already started to see the changes. Eric Kelly has ascended or assumed the office or the position of chairman of the Board of Selectmen. And right away, we're seeing changes, right away, in the way meetings are being conducted, the way people are being treated, the way the discussion goes. Now, some people say, Eric, and I'll be quite frank, I hear a common criticism of Eric Kelly has been, Eric, please make the meeting move faster. Don't talk so much. But again, this is the nature of Eric Kelly, is that he wants you to be with him while he uncovers what's going on in town. So if he has a question for town council, he doesn't want to ask town council the question or receive a written script from anybody. He wants to ask the question and get it answered openly in public.
I like that.
And as things go on, you'll see that altered and probably modified a bit, because everybody grows and evolves or develops in whatever office they're in. So those are some of the big changes that are happening, and it's going to have a massive impact. At the same time, we'll talk a little bit more about what was on the agenda for the select board meeting. What's happening too is that I think the process of selecting people and finding people and encouraging people, that whole process of getting people to serve on appointed boards and committees is going to become more active, more receptive. We've played a clip on this show many times of good old George Shaw, rest his soul, talking about what happens to people who apply to get on various boards and committees. Like I applied once to get onto the Airport Commission, and I know where my application went. It went into, as I say, a strong steel cylindrical container, okay? Trish Simpson has made an open plea for people to please get involved. There are lots of boards and committees that do not require like a meeting every week for 3 or 4 hours, okay? There are some boards and committees that literally meet just a handful of times in a year, some even less than that. I think the Cultural Council, don't come down on me too hard, Cultural Council members, committee members. I think you meet like 2 or 3 times a year. I could be wrong, but that's my impression. So please, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be a lawyer. You don't have to be a PhD. You don't have to be an attorney. You don't have to be a civil engineer. You have to have a deep interest, and you have to have skin in the game. You have to want to see the town grow the way it is, in such a way that is compatible with our natural surroundings. That's all I ask, that you have a commitment to do that, okay? Now, one thing we don't want to change is Amy Troup.
Oh, she's...
Okay. There's Amy Troup.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Amy. Welcome back. Good to see you.
Thanks.
You've got a lot of stuff going on, and
it's been a busy couple of weeks.
It has been for everybody. Do you feel kind of like burned out a little bit? Do we need a vacation or what?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to be heading away pretty soon. I need a couple of days off. It's been so eventful. I'm not crying about it, but you know, sometimes you need a little change of scenery, and I encourage everybody to do that once in a while. But the lesson of control room, there are actually 2 primary lessons. One is that if you want to understand Marshfield, look at what's happening nationally. If you want to understand what's happening nationally, look at Marshfield, because human nature is what it is, and it really doesn't change, okay? The other thing we try to do in Control Room is we try to take in the lessons of our forefathers, our patriots, our Minutemen. You know, we were just talking about the almost Battle of Marshfield that happened. You know, Marshfield was a Tory hotbed, and there were so many British loyalists in Marshfield that when the events of Lexington and Concord, and even prior to that, you know, the Tea Party and the other events in Boston that were going on, when all those things were unfolding, the Tories in Marshfield sent letters to the commanding generals in Boston and said, we're kind of afraid. Would you send us some guards, some troops? And so they sent, I think, something like 100 British troops to Marshfield as like guardians for the Tories that lived here. And after the events of Lexington and Concord, what happened was that basically Tories were there was almost like open season now on British soldiers. And as what happened in the Lexington Concord area, when the alarm went out, you had people coming from towns in a wide area. People came they marched all night long from places like Woburn and Wilmington and Acton and Lincoln, and they all just converged in the Lexington Concord area. And in the case of Marshfield, American militia, what did they do? They came from Hanson, Halifax, Plymouth, Carver. They converged just outside of Marshfield in Duxbury, and there was hundreds of them. And the British troops who were camping down off of Webster Street, they got wind of it, and they said, maybe it's time for us to get the hell out of here. And so they snuck over towards Brant Rock and got on longboats, and they evacuated the town. They took a lot of Tories with them. And so that's what we do here, is that we look at the towns around us like Hanover, Pembroke, Plymouth, Halifax, where Amy's from, Hanson. And we want to, and I've done this as long as I've been doing this program, is bring in people from all these different towns. And actually, Amy, you're the first one from Halifax, I have to say. But,
oh, yay.
So you're, I'm going to memorialize this somehow. You're going to put your hands in cement outside the studio.
Well, maybe we're repeating this Tory right now.
The response to Tories.
You
right.
had so many people helping in the Marshfield election from Pembroke,
yes,
from Halifax, and other towns, and we're doing that in Hanover now.
That's right.
And
that's right.
It's great.
That's what I've been. I've actively tried to do that, and other people are doing it. And the key thing is that we share notes, because what you're going through, we're going through. We're not alone here, folks.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of real people deserving of recognition who are really performing heroic deeds, quite literally, to hold because it's about accountability. And I'm really glad to have Amy here today, because you just had your town meeting on Monday.
We did on Monday night.
And guess what's coming up this weekend? Elections everywhere. Mm-hmm. Plymouth, Halifax, Hanson, Whitman, Bridgewater, Plimpton, Hanover, Pembroke. I mean, the wide swath of towns around us are having elections. And I'm going to be making the rounds. I hope to be able to go, and I'm going to put off my little vacation and hang around Saturday, and actually we had people come over from the surrounding towns at our recent election and join with us and sort of celebrate together the removal of our third incumbent in a row.
I love it. Yes, love it.
And we're going to go for a new person, number 4, next year. And in all the other towns around us, there are incumbents, there are entrenched people. And I'm not saying, well, it's not a party thing, definitely not a party thing, okay?
It's not.
It's really about, as you say, and Amy has produced a lot of great short videos. If you look up Amy Troup on Facebook, you'll see that Amy has produced some really cool short videos, and where you're exhorting people, what's happening is not their fault, it's our fault for not doing anything.
Yes.
And what's the old adage? The only thing for evil to succeed is for good people to do nothing.
That's true. Yep.
Right?
We sit back and we say, they did this to us. Well, you didn't go to town meeting the other night then. You did it to yourself.
Right, and some people say, I didn't even know. I didn't even know that I could challenge the ZBA ruling what the town meeting was going on. Yes, so our town meeting resumes June the 2nd. That's a Monday. It's coming up in, let's see, 3 weeks. So that is the meeting where we're going to resume town meeting, and we're going to take up the budget items. And those budget articles, those various appropriations are ripe for discussion and potential amendments. Right now, what's happening, if you pay attention to the select board meetings, the interim administrator has been keeping everybody up to date on his review of the existing budget. There he is, Peter Moran, the interim Marshfield. He is a former administrator for Norwell, and he's kind of become like a have gun for hire or something like that. What's that old TV Western show? What was it? Have gun will travel or something like that. Anyway, so he's making the rounds, and so far he's getting pretty good marks, from the public and from select board members in terms of being helpful in applying his experience. So we'll see how that turns out. Now, in the meantime, what I want to say, and this leads into what I want to talk to Amy about, is on the select board agenda, there's so much going on, folks, so many controversial things, and I'm not going to be talking about the Marshfield Commercial Fishermen's Association, although some people have been asking me lots of questions about it. I would just advise people to stay tuned, because there was a bit of an incident involving the Marshfield Commercial Fishermen's Association when Trish Simpson, candidate for select board, made an appearance there. So stay tuned for that. I think that there's going to be some more comment about what happened there. Basically, Trish Simpson was kind of ambushed by some unsavory activities or elements that were in there. Stay tuned for that. So I'm not going to get into that tonight, but I really need to talk about what was on the select board agenda, which was, and again, this is different. There are changes coming, and this is even the agendas are appearing differently, and the way it's being conducted is being done differently. One of the things that came up was something called discussion on proclamations. Now, some people thought that there was going to be a proclamation that was going to be discussed and voted on. You see, last year we had a couple of proclamations that engendered some controversy and discussion. One was the declaration of June as Gay Pride Month, or LGBTQ, or just generally Pride Month. The other one was the adoption of a resolution or a proclamation proclaiming Marshfield to be a Purple Heart community, or city or town. I forget what it's called. And Eric Kelly voted no on both things because he's against using a government office for political statements, or for partisan statements, or for special interest statements. He can define it better for you than I can, but he doesn't want to see the select board or any elected board be put into the position where the members have to vote yes or no on something, because what people remember is just the yes or the no vote. They don't remember the discussion or the logic behind the way they voted. So that's why, after talking to Eric, I understand it, that he does not want proclamations being a cause for politicization or division within the town, of an article or within the town, respectively. So all that was Eric Kelly wanting that on the agenda so he could get the thoughts from his fellow board members. Also, during public comment period, several people made comments about the idea of the select board bringing up and voting on proclamations, like a yes or no vote, up or down vote on a proclamation. I think from talking to people in town, what's needed is some sort of a compromise situation where we can talk about the issues affecting people and give those causes or concerns a platform. Of course, we could be spending 2 meetings a week talking about causes and issues in town, whether it be trash pickup or mental health awareness, et cetera, and equal rights. so you have to be a little bit judicious about how you do that. And that's all that was Eric Kelly wanted to get input from the other board members. And again, the public comment period was well utilized by people who came to the chambers on Monday night and gave some thoughts on the issue of proclamations in general. Some people, again, were there thinking they're going to vote on a proclamation tonight, and it just wasn't going to happen.
Right.
The other thing that came up that I want to really get into right now is the issue of the town administrator. Like I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, we have an interim town administrator after Michael Maresco was asked to resign. Okay, that's what I've heard. And why was he asked to resign? And if he did resign, why did he get 6 months of severance?
That wasn't part of his contract, correct?
Apparently not. From the stuff I've read, he wasn't entitled to anything if he resigned. But he did bring in a lawyer, and under his contract, I think if he was forced to resign, he would get 3 months severance. And that turned into 6 months. So
that's a hefty paycheck.
Yeah, I mean, and you're making
Isn't it
$240 a year.
Yeah, I was going to say it's $120,000.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to get a $120,000 parting gift from anything, and of course his salary was in that range up there, $240 or so, and he had a phone, he had travel allowances, he had his dues paid for different organizations that he may have belonged to, professional organizations. So I think he had a pretty rich package, especially when you're making more than the mayor of Boston as a base salary. And so that was on the agenda. Now is to discuss what's coming up now is finding a replacement town administrator. I know I'm talking too much. I apologize for that. We need to now begin the town administrator search process. Now, just as I mentioned, we need board and committee members, and people are begging, please, try to sign up. If you don't like it, then quit after a year. But preferably, we want people to hang in there, okay, for the full 3-year terms, which is what most board and committee terms are. But check it out. And one thing we're going to be needing are people to serve on the town administrator search committee. So I think the direction that they're going in is to hire a professional firm to give us guidance. But what bothers me about a professional firm that gives guidance is that this is what they do all the time. They already have, as was stated at the meeting, a Rolodex of potential town administrators. So it's kind of like my view of it is like a clique. It already exists out there. There's this sort of, I don't know what it is, network of town administrator or public administrators.
There is.
And they know where the jobs are, and they know who needs a job, and they know who they want to reward. And like when Rocco Longo was, rest his soul, when he was, before he came to Marshfield, I knew more than 6 months in advance that he would be our new town administrator. He was up in Billerica, he had been in Duxbury, and I said, yeah, they're going to bring Rocco back. And sure enough, and he wasn't a bad guy. He was actually, to me, he was one of the more personable town administrators we've ever had.
But isn't that...
He had a conscience.
Isn't it sort of scary that they're bringing in just people? And so I feel like they're trained from the state. Because remember I said that my town administrator was in the Marshfield offices having a town administrator meeting on the day before Maresco was resigned or whatever.
What was he doing having a town administrator's coffee clutch when he was about to be walked out the door?
Yeah, and I guess
how did that happen?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I also overheard our town administrator is also leaving Halifax in July, which I could have called after the MBTA vote. But I also overheard him stating that one of the town administrators in the area was keeping all of their prices down, or their salaries, I mean.
Who's keeping the salaries?
An East Bridgewater town administrator is keeping the average of what others
just
are
by
getting.
taking a smaller paycheck?
Correct.
Well, what's wrong with that?
I don't know.
Are they now? He's now being ostracized by the club.
Well, think about it. They're doing this study for all the different town positions, and now like fire and police, they all like look at each other, they all compare, and they're in competition. They're like, well, this girl over here in Marshfield, she gets, and then this one, and they're doing this whole comparison thing, and not realizing that the money is coming from the taxpayers. So, like, I think that it was done on purpose to start bringing up all these salaries.
Yeah, they'll always compare us. Well, first of all, we've seen the list when we've produced it on the screen here of how much different towns pay for their students, how much does the fire chief get in Hanover versus Marshfield versus Bridgewater, et cetera, et cetera. So that, yeah, there's this comparison. But I think the issue, what you have to suspect is that everybody knows that, and so everybody knows that if you, depending on who you choose for comparison, and depending on whose salaries get boosted, it's almost like, well, you're in real estate. What happens when a house in the neighborhood goes for an outrageous price?
Then the next person calls up and they want to get that outrageous price.
So
too.
it affects. It has that kind of a relationship or ancillary effect that affects everybody around you.
More so in the last 25 years, I think, than before that. Like, I think HGTV has sort of made everybody talk about real estate so much and like the comparisons, but it's also linked, in my opinion, I have a hypothesis, but I think it's pretty true, that the assessments keep going up based on it, because back in the beginning of the century, they made it that the value for assessment would go up to what the sales price or what the worth was in the last 2 years. So if a cape on, Main Street sold for $400,000, now all the capes on Main Street are going to need to go up to that price over the next couple of years, which means that people are getting priced out of their home.
How convenient that the government then realizes the windfall. How convenient.
Isn't
that
it?
Then our tax base goes up and there's lots of more money for them to play with. How convenient. But anyway, so the search process has begun. They're looking for people to be on the committee, the search committee.
Very important.
We're going to initially probably consult with a specialist that does this kind of thing. They're already going to have in their Rolodex probably 30 names. So from the get-go, the base from which we choose is already kind of rigged or
What
set.
about putting it on, so if I was on that search committee, I would also add putting it on WATD.
WATD, Facebook, LinkedIn,
Local
just hire a local
newspapers.
headhunter. Yeah, hire a local headhunter.
But just one place means that you're
Right.
getting a certain, I would be reaching out wide, because wouldn't it be amazing if you could find somebody locally that really cares about the town? I'm not saying.
Well, that's what
last.
happened. I watched your Halifax town meeting from Monday night, and there was a big, long discussion about the whole process of finding a new town administrator. And we're going to play that clip in a minute of a section. I mean, the discussion went on for over 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Just on what we should establish as a base salary. What was happening is that your town meeting was voting on the next year's budget for the town administrator position, but the town administrator just recently announced he's leaving. His name is Haddad, and from watching the way he comports himself, he seems like a smart guy, a young guy, and maybe his first town administrator position. But as part of it was a very lengthy discussion, and you'll pick up, if you can watch this clip, you'll pick up on how along the way, the people at the front of the room on the dais, the leaders of the town, they really don't know a hell of a lot about the process. Not as much as we know in Marshfield now, whereas an interim can serve so much time by state law. They serve like 4 months. The idea that we need to have more money to attract better candidates is kind of a fallacy to me, because Halifax has already shown that they've gotten kind of rookies or novices at the business that have actually performed really well. And as time goes on, what do you do if they perform well? You give them a raise.
Right.
I mean, you don't just say, we have to put $180,000 on the table or we won't get good help. Well, then, and also I heard from Halifax that you once had a local person that had to fill in. I wrote the
Sandy
name.
Nolan.
Sandy Nolan.
Yeah.
And she apparently did a great job. It was liked by everybody, and she was familiar with everybody. So yeah, sometimes you can find somebody local and homegrown that can fill in, and if they do good enough job.
So a little background on this is that Mr. Haddad wanted to leave a few years ago, and it was taken into executive session. I believe it was March of 2023. I think so. March 2023, and he was given a very extensive package, a huge raise that started. Like, so he got a $35,000 raise to stay.
Yeah.
They put him at 158, then 168, and then and has 5 vacations and all these perks and the phones and the everything. And so the town of Halifax didn't have any say in it. And it really made a lot of people upset. It was done in executive session because he had interviewed in another town. I believe it was Mendon.
Yeah, that's what happened here with Moresco. I think we would just they would go into executive session discussions, and next thing you know, they would be announced that he was getting this big raise.
Yeah.
And then it got put onto the warrant at the various town meetings, and nobody questioned it or shot it down.
Yeah.
You know, it was like a done deal. But anyway. Remind me to talk about the heliport, okay, before we close the show.
Oh, yeah.
Folks, I am going to mention the heliport. That was at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting last night that I attended. They want to build a heliport on Old Colony Lane. Oh, that's a beauty. Okay, so remind me that before we close out the show. But let's go, and Amy will take notes and make some commentary. Compare now how they're handling the issue of trying to sell to the public, to the town meeting, how we need to prepare to get ready to get a new town administrator when Mr. Haddad leaves.
Do they have those numbers available as to what the comp towns are funded this position for in fiscal year 2025, both the average and the mean?
I can ask Mr. Walters.
Sure. So we have surrounding town information. We don't have it here tonight, but we can certainly get that to you.
Were those numbers used when you were?
So to be fair with this specific line item, the monies that are allocated were the monies that would have been allocated for next fiscal year, regardless of who was there or who was staying or who was going.
This has nothing to do with personnel.
I understand what
Please
you're
don't interrupt.
asking.
Let him finish,
I understand what you're asking. You know, our concern as the Finance Committee is that we want the best for the town, and I'm sure everyone here agrees we want the best person in that role for the town who's going to do the things for the town that need to be done on a daily, day-to-day basis. The town administrator, town manager, whatever title you want to put on it, is effectively the head of the body of government here. So, you know, we recommended this number because we want that to be available. So when we do go into a search, we're not getting fresh-faced college graduates who've never looked at a $31 million budget to figure out how to work it. So that's why the number is what it is. You know, the Finance Committee specifically was not part of the negotiation for the town administrator. That was the Board of Selectmen that negotiated that contract. So, you know, the inner workings of that answer I think would have to come from the Board of Selectmen.
I think that number actually should come from the Finance Committee because they're privy to the information of what our comparable 8 towns are. And that's all I'm asking for. I realize that we all want to drink champagne, but sometimes we're on a beer budget. If we have those numbers available to us, shouldn't we be utilizing those numbers from the comp towns to develop our budget? I'm not asking that we slash this. If the comp towns say that this position should be funded for $174,000, great, let's fund it for that position. But if the comp towns say you can only afford $150,000 based on the number, that's where we should be. Like it or not. I mean, I'd love to drive a Bentley. I don't have the funds to do so. And we have those 8 communities to compare to for a reason, and we have historically compared to those towns. All I'm asking is that you provide that number so we can build a budget that reflects our affordability.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
So, a couple of things. First of all, when the budget was prepared, this figure was a contracted amount. We already have a contract in place. That's where we start. Second, the role of the town administrator has expanded considerably over the past several years, mostly having to do with the complexities of running a $31 million operation, which is what we do. So our town administrator is expected to and does contractual negotiations with all of the unions. works with the Finance Committee, essentially acts as the financial officer in terms of helping them understand the revenues, the expenditures, that kind of thing. He oversees a lot of the operations of town halls directly, including the IT department, including some of the other things. And he also kind of acts as an overall supervisor for the town, or at least a resource for the town department heads that they can they can go to questions for, and he can help us keep the process moving in the right direction. So honestly, it's a big deal, a big job. I think previous speakers point that, well, I want to see the comps. Well, before the negotiation would happen again, that's exactly what we would do. We'd have to look at the comps and say, okay, what's the number? Just because it's in this book doesn't mean that that'll be spent. I think everyone on the board has said that. But if we have a lower number, we can't go above it. So it's very important that we keep in mind that this number is right now within the range of town administrators that we use in this town, and also that if we're looking to replace them, we're going to have a certain amount of flexibility, and that's what this number provides. If we can negotiate a better deal, it certainly will happen.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. Your name and address, please.
Joanne Rosen, C111 Leiden Lane. Has this job already been posted since Cody's given his notice?
No, it has not.
Okay. I was just
Well,
wondering.
let me, if I can expand on that. So what we are looking to do is to hire a consultant to help us with that search. So again, this is sort of a specialized world when you get to town administrators, and you really don't want to just put an ad in the newspaper. You want to have experienced people who will know the landscape, will know the salary structures, will understand and do the reference checks and all of that. So it's a pretty involved process. So the next step is to hire that consultant, which the board is in the process now of interviewing at least a couple of them. And then after that, the job will be posted.
So do you know what salary starting point you would post it as?
We don't really.
Mr. Moderator, if I may, the board hasn't discussed that yet, but I can let town meeting know that I spoke with one of the consultants who does most of the town administrator recruitments around the state. He's currently doing 12 of them now, and he advised a range would be about 160 to 180 that he would recommend in order to attract qualified candidates.
Okay, thank you.
And the second question to this was, what is the cost of the consultant here? Is that X amount of months of pay and salary? Do we pay them like 2 months of salary that, for this individual? How much does that cost us?
Let's try to find that out.
Is the question the consultant or the interim? The consultant?
Yeah, the consultant you're going to hire. We generally get or the recruiter or both.
We don't have proposals yet to identify the cost. Once those proposals are in, they'll be taken up by the Board of Selectmen in a public meeting, and those will be addressed. We do not have any
Typically, if we're
proposals.
going to hire a recruiter, we're going to pay a couple of months' worth of salary.
Typically, town administrator recruitments for a town of Halifax's size are probably average about $10,000 right now.
Okay.
So there you go. There's some commentary about how another town, not too far away from us, is dealing with the issue, and a lot of key points came up. Now, what happened was that Mr. Haddad had, after he had been on for 2 or 3 years, his salary and benefits had gone up to $174,000. I don't know where he started.
He started somewhere around 130, and then
Okay.
he was leaving to go to Mendon, and they took an executive session and gave him an extensive contract with steps from 158 to 168 to 178, and if he left, or if we broke his contract, then he would get like the whole thing. Or it was a lot, and 5 weeks of vacation, and we were all like, whoa, wait a minute here. He's like very young. It's his first town administrative job, and you just did that without asking the town. You're just going to give him a extensive package. We were all very upset about that.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah, your only recourse is when you see his line item come up on the budget at the next town meeting, is to either reduce it, but then what they'll do is they'll cry and they say, oh, we already signed a contract. And if town meeting slashes it, then what happens? The person who signed the contract will cry foul, And what are they going to do? What is the rest of is the select board going to take up a collection to keep them on board if they love them that much? One thing that struck me, a minor point, is that I believe it was the chair, Mr. Walters from the Finance Committee. You call it the Finance Committee.
Yep.
We call it the Advisory Board. He didn't seem to know the difference between a town administrator and a town manager.
Which is huge. She's like,
Yeah.
whatever title you want to put on it. Well, there's a difference there, Mr. Walters.
Right, and then Mr. Bruno picked up on was propounding the idea that wow, this job has gotten so complex and it's gotten so involved and complicated. It's a big job when you're managing a town with a budget of $31 million. It was like a quarter of Marshfield, you know. But it's gotten so complicated. And I'm like, well, who made it complicated? How did it get complicated?
So the Board of Selectmen decided to give him the appointing of daily decisions. So he's basically running the town in that way. But he also has, he's in charge of public records. And here's the hugest question. But hold on. Our town clerks are elected to be in charge of public records. So how do we take that from the town clerk and give it to this town manager who doesn't live in town or anything like that? I think that it should stay with the town clerk.
Yes, and guess what we do? Our town clerk had been making in the 60s, 60-something thousand for many, many years. Patty Pico, rest her soul, lovely lady. And then when her position was assumed through an election by our current town administrator, she wrote a town meeting article herself and presented it herself.
Oh, wow.
For a raise.
Wow.
And I'm totally sympathetic to the town clerk's office because I know they have a lot of work to do. They're the busiest place in town.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, give a raise, but don't forget the assistants there. They also need money because they're putting in extensive hours and they're having to go to training, et cetera.
Our town clerk in 23 was making 56 and now is making 76.
Well, here's my point.
But I feel like
Our town clerk is now making 80-something, but guess what? You just mentioned they are the public records custodian or contact person for public records requests. She gets like a bonus of something like $14,000 for handling public records requests. What?
That's our job.
So you're pushing $100,000 a year, and I'm like, how is that possible? You know, one of the other elements that I saw in that discussion was people brought up good points again, like we just talked about how we need to look around us to see what people are actually getting for the salary.
They didn't, and they wouldn't even name the town.
Right, and they couldn't. They couldn't name it, and they couldn't give any numbers. But they want you to vote on it now, and they'll give you the information later.
Yeah.
Hello.
Which goes right back to your new. To Eric, not your new selectman, but to Eric saying that he wants to have these discussions in public, and I agree. Like when the lawyer is giving us advice and he's at the table with us, we should be talking about it openly so that the people understand. I see this trend in Halifax too, where a selectman will sit individually with the town administrator, and it's like, all right, well, now you're just listening to this town administrator tell you what you need to do, and I don't find it to be transparent.
No.
And it's like making a plan. You know, and that's one of the things that they've been doing is making plans and trying to do things behind people's backs.
No, I found that your leadership on the dais was really lacking in facts, and they almost seemed duplicitous. In other words, they really weren't there to give you the truth.
No. They're appointed and backed by the chair of the select board, who, thank God, is not running. Bye, Bruno. And I literally, he's done horrifying things for the town. He He didn't listen to a whole great haul of 100.
Yeah. What do you think? He's resigning? Is that what's happening? Because he doesn't look like he's like on his last legs.
He just decided not to get reelected, which I could have told you back in December after we said
precipitate that?
the MBTA vote. There was 722 people, and he was really for it. I mean, there's a clip actually that I sent in of him removing me from the zoning bylaw review committee, taking the committee from 9 down to 5, and doing it because I'm against MBTA housing, and also Thorndike was in that selectmen's meeting right beforehand saying, oh, we want to build 102 apartments on these here wetlands, and he wanted me off of that board so that this could all happen without anybody there knowing what a zoning bylaw is.
You believe in karma?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. You see? Oh,
Consideration of appointment to zoning bylaw committee. We have 2 applicants.
An applicant, I was on.
We have 2 applicants for the final spot on the,
Stamped open seat.
excuse me, zoning bylaw review committee. Anybody have a thought?
I think they're both qualified candidates. What do you got?
Either one is qualified for the job. I mean, we only need one, so.
They're both members of
You're also
committees,
on.
right? I think
no.
Amy's on planning and Frank's on finance.
He's on finance, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cody, we didn't set any
No.
precursors to
Nope.
what committee is over the other?
Nope, we did not. I do believe the draft, the charge that we drafted did say that first consideration would be given to the existing members of the, or the previous members of the committee before it was reestablished, but it didn't say that, only consideration. It just said first consideration, in which that was that first group of individuals that you appointed at the last meeting, and then we received notification from Ms. Troup that she was interested just recently, and then Mr. Johnson from the Finance Committee had mentioned his interest as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Lloyd.
My hesitancy with Amy Troup is that she's already come out very strong in terms of the MBTA project, and I'm concerned that she wouldn't have an open mind about that. We do have to address it, whether we agree to do it or not agree to do it. And so that's my concern is with that. She went to a couple of our meetings and
Read the
was
law.
just adamant that it would never happen, she would never vote for it or anything like that. And I think that might not be helpful. What we need is open minds, some people that are thinking
Open
about
minds,
it
yeah.
and saying, let's decide whether we should do this or shouldn't do this, or how to go about doing it. So that's my concern.
You can cut it.
Yeah.
That's
I
it,
get-
Dave. Wow. So you need to have an open mind.
Yeah.
According to his definition of an open mind. You can't go in there with any kind of conviction or firm idea based on your research. It reminds me of going to the doctor and saying, hey, doctor, I read something on the internet about the pills you're giving me. Could you give me some more information? Oh, no, can't talk about that. You can't have a brain around here.
Yeah. So he wanted to remove me
Yeah.
because, so by the way, I was in touch with him the whole time that he became selectman. We tried to have meetings. He wouldn't show up. So at first it was the fact that we couldn't have a quorum. And then I kept talking to him all the way into July, and then he said that I didn't answer some email, which I proved I did, and now this is his new reason to take me off. But I had a stamped open seat as a planning board member to be on the zoning bylaw committee, which was 9 people. And he took it down to 5 and made it appointed. It was a finance committee.
So there was a reserved slot for a planning board member?
2 of them.
And how could he eliminate something that's required?
So he took the committee of 9 down to 5, and it was appointed. So there's there's 2 appointed members on the zoning bylaw review committee that are also on finance and are also on this new pet project that he made about a year ago, government study. So it's all the same people. And by the way, one of our selectmen, I'm sorry, one of our, there is a man on the finance committee that is an ex-chief, thank you for your service, but he didn't make any efforts to even speak or do anything, and he's just an appointed member. And I did hear that Bruno wanted to put out a letter to support him, but maybe he shouldn't, because you're not rerunning because you saw 700 people tell you no to MBTA housing. And then,
Wow.
by the way, the 94 pages that the zoning bylaw review committee gave to the planning board had to be passed over because there was a 5-0 vote of the planning board to not recommend Mr. Bruno's 5 appointed member bylaw.
Sounds like you got a lot of power concentrated or seated with one person there.
Yes.
But you say he's leaving now,
Yep,
right?
he's not rerunning. And somebody on the finance committee who's appointed is running for selectman.
Do you have a good replacement?
Yes, Gordon Andrews is running for selectman. And there was controversy over the fact that he sued the town a few years ago. But here's the thing. He sued because somebody tried to put a street on 74 feet of frontage next to his house.
What's wrong with standing up for what you think is right? And why is that a black mark?
Well, basically that because some of these people, like the moderator, who's also the chair of the planning board, this incestuous stuff, they worked against them, and we had a lot of money go out from the taxpayers to defend the zoning board of appeals, who was told by town council that the permits were invalid. So that's why they wanted to sue. So they used our money to sue Gordon back. And it's just, but Gordon Andrews is very smart. He was on the school committee, very good with finance, and he knows town government very well. So please, on Saturday, vote for Gordon Andrews so that we can maybe have a way to fix our fiscal issues in the town of Halifax.
We'll make sure this, the program gets posted. Again, folks, if you want to see Control Room at your leisure and you want to watch it again, you can go to Marshfield Community Media, where they usually stream it, but they don't always make it easy to stream on demand. So go to YouTube and type in type in Control Room and then the letters MCM for Marshfield Community Media. And you can see the show anytime at your leisure, on your pad, on your phone. And also we're now on Rumble, Control Room, MCM, and also on X. And when you're there, please hit the like button, okay? Because that really helps. And it helps make it more visible. Otherwise, the show kind of gets buried and it gets harder to find. So again, check us out on YouTube and on Rumble. Well, again, this is a lot of things, and I'm glad to have you here because we always talk to people in other towns, and we learn a lot, and we also learn a lot about human nature, and how it can sometimes work against what's the right thing to do, unfortunately. I want to bring up, like I've been saying, I need to bring this up. Oh, by the way, I noticed at your town meeting, we saw the clips. You guys have an interesting way of running town meeting. You have red and green cards.
All your neighbors can see exactly how you vote. It's funny, the selectmen were all watching, what is she voting for? Is she voting yes or red? And I saw the chair actually chuckle at one of my votes, and I actually said it out loud. I was like, oh, chuckling much? Huh? Call him out.
Oh, geez. I could tell you stories all night long about the stuff that goes on at our town meetings. People
crazy.
Swearing at you, mumbling under their breath, sticking their leg out to trip you, all that kind of stuff. I've experienced it all. But the cards are a great idea because I think that hands themselves just kind of get lost, get blended in with the hands and the faces and the body parts behind and around you. So I think that's a good thing that we should pick up on.
We used to just scream out yes and no.
Yeah, we did that too. And who could yell the loudest?
I know. Well,
we had people remember this. We had something called Section 10 because we divided up the voting blocks, for the purpose of counts into 10 sections. And then if we had more than that, then we'd fill the bleachers and we'd add 4 more sections. But all the naysayers or the people who are reform-minded and open-minded, we'd all sort of gravitate towards Section 10. And we had so many incidents when we took a vote, a standing count, where like we would go through the sections 1 through 9, and Section 1 would be all the mucky mucks and the town leaders sat, was always like 30-0 in favor of whatever article they were promoting. And Section 10 was always 0 to whatever, against what Section 1 wanted. And there were many instances when we were in the process of taking a vote. We get through 9 sections, and it's like, oh, we're going to lose. We're going to be defeated again. You know, the insiders have beat us again. The empire has struck back and defeated us. And then Section 10 would come out like 56-0, you know, and just flip the vote around. And it's a wonderful feeling. So I just want to communicate that to people. So please come to town meetings. And,
yes.
And Amy's a great promoter of that too. Again, check out her videos. But I want to touch on what happened before we go.
The helipad.
And I'm sorry, we're not going to have time for Mr. Sweezy and Mr. O'Connor. So sorry, guys. No time for you guys tonight. Maybe next time. That's okay. Thanks, guys. That's an inside joke. See you later. Pat O'Connor and Ken. Anyway, so what happened at the zoning board was that on the agenda, a lot of people saw it and got immediately like, what? A company called Equitable Development was seeking a special permit in accordance with the Marshfield Municipal Code to bring in 500 cubic yards or more and to disturb, as fill, and disturb 10,000 square feet, and to get approval to construct a 60 by 80, which is pretty good sized building, on the north side of which will have an asphalt driveway connecting a helipad to the 60-foot by 80-foot building. The 60-foot by 80-foot building is a hangar where they're going to store aircraft, namely helicopters. And then let's say this is the building. Then off of the building there'd be pavement sticking out like this, and there'd be a helipad, say over where my hand is, my left hand. So there you go. So this is the hangar. My hand is the helipad, and the white in between the hangar and my hand would be this is my hand, this is the helipad, would be the pavement. So to get to the helipad, you have to drive through the hangar building. And the helipad would be like elevated or have retaining walls around it. And the approach to the helipad by helicopters could be from any direction. And there are houses immediately across the street. This is close to a street. There are houses across the street. There are houses to the west, to the northwest. The Beacon 40B project is a little bit more towards the northwest. The Marshfield Airport buildings are to the east and the southeast. I mean, it's surrounded by development, and they were expecting helicopter traffic to be approaching. And helicopters don't come down, like I said at the meeting, I made comments, they don't come down straight out of the sky like you're lowering them on a rope or something like that. It's not an elevator. Helicopters have to make an approach basically like an airplane would, whereas you fly into the wind and you fly in at an angle. So God knows how close these helicopters would be to the nearby houses as they're approaching the helipad. And I have to mention it because there was a really good contingent of local residents that turned out. And we need more people to come. The next meeting is going to be held probably in July. In other words, that hearing has been continued. No decision has been made on it.
Are you aware that there is a case number 1225?
Yes.
CV? Why is that?
Apparently what happened was, I think members of the Airport Commission may have decided that they would like to acquire that property, and I don't know what their objective is. It could be that I'm not discounting that they don't have good sense, and they know that having a helipad, they may be thinking, I'm just speculating, and just don't take this as worth anything really, but they may be speculating that having a helipad this close to residences and to the old colony condos.
It's already a filed case.
Right. It's probably not going to go over well with the community, and it's going to call real negative, put the airport, the Marshfield Airport, in a very negative light, as if they don't need more negativity attached to them. And again, the Marshfield Airport is probably the biggest environmental disaster that's ever happened to the town of Marshfield in its history, because it's a beautiful salt marsh, and they used chemically treated telephone poles by the hundreds to support, driven 30 or 40 feet into the ground to support a mat that is a pad that forms the basis for the runway that was extended several years ago. I mean, and these chemically treated telephone poles are right in close or in the banks of the Green River, which runs through the area. I'm just wondering if there's any elevated levels of, you know, heavy metals showing up in the Green River going out into our fishing grounds, as an example.
So it was denied on April 15th.
They probably denied, and what was denied? For the foregoing, most for preliminary injunction is denied. Oh, so Equitable made a motion for a preliminary injunction, maybe to block the eminent domain taking. That's my guess, because again, the town through the Airport Commission has applied to acquire that property by eminent domain, and it looks like that maybe the judge may have denied, which is good news for the residents of Marshfield. But we have to keep the ball rolling. You have to stay involved, keep the pressure on the select board and on the Airport Commission, because this is a really crazy idea. The ZBA initially has taken, I think, the proper moves. I think they've hired attorney Witten from Duxbury, who we know from the old 40B fights years ago. He was on our side. They've also going to require this proponent of this project to pay into the town, into a fund, to help hire engineers to review this project. Hopefully it won't be the guy Pesci who reviews 40B projects, because he always comes down on the side of the proponent.
I don't understand this. Like, the engineers need to, it's happening a lot lately that the engineers are like trying to help the developers go.
Yeah, I don't want to cast Mr. Pesci, but in my view, he's not a strong enough advocate for the town and the environment. Okay, and it's like, I just don't like his approach. It's personal in terms of my evaluation of how he does his work. I'm not saying he's not competent and that he's not right about some things, but so anyway, so the ZBA is saying, okay, Equitable. And you know, it's funny, after the meeting was over, the two guys kind of, after they heard the long list of requirements they had to meet and what the zoning board wanted from them initially, and seeing the opposition from all the residents, and I spoke about it, about my concerns, the two guys went outside, and I'll show you a personal observation. They went outside and got into a pickup truck. And a long time after the meeting was over, I walked outside, and the two guys were sitting. One was an attorney, I believe, one was an engineer. And they were sitting in the truck just looking straight ahead, like that. And you could tell they were probably on a conference call inside the truck. And the looks on their faces didn't look like they were in a celebratory mood.
Have you looked up who owns Equitable Development LLC?
I did a while ago. What do you got?
Dr. Hairston is the principal owner of
Dr. Hairston?
Yep.
Where's he from, does it say?
Oh, almost there. Of Equitable Development LLC, an educational and community development research firm, and directs a Lilly Endowment funded initiative for Seattle Presbytery.
Wow. I wonder if that's the same Equitable Development LLC. That sounds like they're into it. Just sounds like they're into a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And well, I think Lilly one of those philanthropies that gives money away to different nonprofits or something?
Yeah, I think it is. And
anyway.
But I'll research it on the registry.
Do your research, folks. And what's the message, Amy? What are people supposed to do?
You're supposed to go to town meeting. It takes a lot less time to go to town meeting than it does to complain the rest of the year. And do not forget to vote this weekend, 10 to 6 in Halifax, Gordon Andrews.
And everywhere else.
Yes.
Contact me if you want to participate. I know where you can go. Thank you.
Amen.